when I asked the difficult question, is this related to the vaccine, yes or no? I have an absolute moral and professional obligation to address that question. I can't walk away from it.
Yeah.
The Dean of the medical school at the Royal Free Hospital School of Medicine said in his office to me one day, if you continue with this vaccine safety research,
done.
It's not going to be good for your career.
Thank you so much, Andy, for doing this. This is a very surreal moment for me because I was first introduced to your works from clients of mine in my early 20s, and they individually had all been dealing with the same thing, and they all had the same belief and outcome, that the reason that their children were in varying degrees of autistic or autism, they believed it was due to childhood vaccines. Because there was, in their mind, in their world, child was fine, child was progressing, child goes in for routine scheduled well visit. Shortly thereafter, when shortly, I mean weeks, child behavior changes, and the child that they had before that visit never returned. And in my early 20s, I had no children, no plans of having children. I don't have brothers or sisters, so I'm an only child. I'm alone in this world and on this journey. And it was so strange to me that so many people who didn't know each other all were saying the same thing. And then one of them brought up who you were in one of my haircuts. And then the wonderful world of the web tells you the things that you need to know or that you should know. They don't always tell you the full picture. What you said and what you wrote about made you like the most controversial doctor in like the last 35 years. Am I wrong on any of these things? I feel like you kind of are a little controversial. Am I wrong on any of these things? I feel like you kind of are a little controversial. But should it be controversial? And I'm so sorry just to jump in like this with you.
Not at all. No. It's
Welcome
great
to the hot seat.
Thank you. It's great to be here. And this is
sorry.
I'm getting a free haircut. I can't complain.
Well, yeah, there's nothing in life is free. You have to endure
the interrogation. Is it true? Absolutely. I mean, what you've recapitulated is the story that I heard.
Yeah.
Way back in 1995. So I was involved in inflammatory bowel disease research, Crohn's and colitis. I was a gastroenterologist, no knowledge of autism at all.
Yeah.
Not taught about it at medical school. And parents would come to me with that same story. My child was absolutely fine. They had speech, language, interaction with their siblings, went for their routine MMR. Parents weren't anti-vaccine at all.
Yeah.
And they disappeared. And it was a succession of events, maybe a seizure, loss of speech, loss of interaction, loss of eye contact, and ultimately a diagnosis of autism. And it followed, in many, many cases, the exposure to the MMR vaccine.
Okay.
Now, it's a very straightforward story. It doesn't need a great deal of interrogation. What you need to do is say, okay, this mother is the best witness of what happened to her child. Mm-hmm. Of what normality meant to her. She had other children. She recognized that something had gone very badly wrong.
Yeah.
And that she now had a child with a diagnosis of what was hitherto an incredibly rare problem.
Yeah.
Autism. So is she to be believed? Absolutely. Until proven otherwise. That's my job as a gastroenterologist, as a physician, is to listen and to act on the story. And this is one of the first lessons I ever learned in medical school. And I remember we were on a ward round with a young surgeon who was teaching us as medical students, and he said, the most important thing you will ever hear is the first thing that the patient tells you about what happened to them. And when you forget that, you turn around, you walk off this ward, off this floor, and you never come back. And it was a message that really had a profound effect on my understanding, particularly in the relationship between a mother and her child.
Yeah.
No one however much they may protest as pediatricians or whatever, no one has the same kind of insight into that child, into their child as the mother does. And that's a fascinating story in and of itself, where that bond, that understanding, almost psychic understanding, comes from.
I mean, that's where they say, there's a woman's intuition.
Yeah.
And then there's a mother's intuition.
Yeah. It's that gut feeling.
I think as a society we go, oh yes, but it's like, but not on these things. These things we are the off limits. This is where we don't believe mothers.
Yeah.
And that was the thing I've never understood, but it was the one thing that I found the paradox of the Me Too movement of believe women, but not mothers.
Yeah.
Because aren't mothers women as well? But anything else that a woman would say, especially as a mother about their child, was now, we can't believe you, or we will not believe that because the science has been settled.
Yeah. I'm a pediatrician. I trained at Harvard. I mean, how can you question my authority? I mean, right. Absolutely staggering, the arrogance.
Yeah.
And so many of diseases, so many human disease syndromes have come about because clinicians have paid attention to what the patient is telling them. In this case, what the mother is telling them about their child. And so let's break it down. Yeah. First of all, normal child. Okay, that's demonstrable. All of them developmental records were there intact, saying this child is developing. They had words, language, interaction. Yeah. They were performing to grade. Then that stopped. That changed. Mm-hmm. And there was clear deterioration in this child, ending up with a diagnosis consistent with autism. Then there's the gastrointestinal symptoms, mm-hmm. which were relevant to my understanding, and the parents saying, my child has wasting, they have failure to thrive, they have bloating, they're in pain. I know they're in pain because I'm their mother. Mm-hmm. And they're leaning on this sofa all day long to put pressure on their abdomen to take the pain away. The doctors say this is just bizarre behavior associated. No, it wasn't. It was totally appropriate behavior for a child who was suffering long-standing gastrointestinal pain. Child has diarrhea, constipation, alternating constipation and diarrhea. Their autism is worse when these bowel symptoms are worse.
Yeah.
That needs to be investigated. Put the autism to one side, put the vaccine to one side. These symptoms are consistent with inflammatory bowel disease until proven otherwise. And this is the key, until proven otherwise. That is our responsibility, to act on the mother's story, to determine whether it's right or wrong. And that's easily investigated.
Okay.
That's what we do all the time. Colonoscopy, upper gastrointestinal endoscopy, blood test. More important certainly is the physical examination of the patient and the history that they give about what their problem is or what the parent says their problem is. And then to take that to the next level and say, right, since these symptoms, the behavioral symptoms and the bowel symptoms fluctuate together, is there some kind of link? Have we ever seen this before in gastroenterology? And the answer is yes, we have. We've seen it with patients in liver failure, for example. When you go into liver failure, then you become encephalopathic. You can't join up dots. You can't coordinate your movements properly. You start to deteriorate. And as the jaundice progresses and as your condition deteriorates, the encephalopathy gets worse and worse and worse. You can't.
And what is the definition of that? Because it's a big word, and I'm so glad you said it and not me.
Hepatic encephalopathy means essentially a disease, a pathology of the brain.
Okay, so this is the brain's not working.
The brain is not working.
I need to put it in simple hairdresser terms.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So it's, again, something that is entirely plausible based upon our prior knowledge.
Yeah.
But the psychiatrist, the child psychiatrist, say there's no link between the gut and the brain. It's like they're disembodied, not even part of the same person. The brain doesn't interact with the intestine. Yes, it does. Some of the classic, or some of the presenting features of celiac disease, which is an intestinal allergy or sensitivity to wheat gluten that has to be taken out of the diet to heal the gut, then some of the cardinal and presenting features of that disease may be neurological. They may be an encephalopathy. They may be seizures. And it's the inquiring mind that puts these two together and says, is there a link? Is something from the gut, inflammation or chemical dysbiosis, whatever it might be, causing injury to the brain? And the answer is, once it's established that it's entirely plausible, it gives you a route by which to investigate it. So that's what we did. We just simply did our job. And then the final question is, okay, the parents have been absolutely right on all these things. Their child was demonstrably normal, then he wasn't. The child had inflammation when we passed the colonoscope or the upper gastrointestinal endoscopy. They had demonstrable inflammation. That responded to treatment, to diet, to anti-inflammatory medication. So there does well appear to be a link between the gut and the brain. So is there a link with the vaccine? The parents have been right on all these things. Mm-hmm. My colleagues in child psychiatry who dismissed them had been wrong on virtually everything. So who do I trust going forward? When I ask the difficult question, is this related to the vaccine, yes or no? I have an absolute moral and professional obligation to address that question. I can't walk away from it.
Yeah.
The Dean of the medical school at the Royal Free Hospital School of Medicine said in his office to me one day, if you continue with this vaccine safety research,
done.
It's not going to be good for your career.
I mean,
I suggest you stop. It made me angry. It made me think, this is not why I went into medicine. I went into medicine to prioritize the patient, to understand what it is that ails them and try my best to put that right. And academic medicine, because there were boundaries that needed to be pushed in order to understand these things better.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. And of course, he was absolutely right. It wasn't good for my career, but here we are today.
There's a lot for me to unpack on that. The first thing is that now, and I think it's so, I find it quite interesting with this movement of biohacking, because, and I'm using that term broadly, by the way. I think a lot of things get included into biohacking that I wouldn't put into biohacking. But you have these individuals who are zeroing in on very specific things to try to optimize the body health for longevity. And I had a client, and she had passed from cancer in the very beginning of 2020, but she was a naturopath doctor. She had a practice in Portland and a practice in California, which is where I would see her as a client. And she told me, she goes, Tab, I don't know if you know this, but you need to start eating fermented foods. And I'm like, why, Jan? She's like, the gut controls the brain. She goes, the research that's coming out is that so much of our moods and our anxieties and all of these things that we've been treating mental health with are actually not mental health. It's a result of an imbalance of the microbiome of our gut. And I was like, that's crazy. I'm like, I don't like fermented foods. I'm part German. I should love sauerkraut. I don't fucking like it. And I definitely don't like kimchi. So I'm like, how am I going to get fermented foods? Well, there's kefir, but there's also a Swedish thing called filmmaker. To any Swedish listeners out there, if they are, I'm butchering it. I'm probably pronouncing it in a German tone, because my Swedish friends are like, why are you saying these like you're German? Well, that's the only other alphabet I fucking know. And then when I had a chiropractor on, his name's Dr. Peter Martinez. He's now my chiropractor. At the time he was not, but talking to him, he's now my chiropractor. He was talking about the vagus nerve and how the vagus nerve is it's like the highway that connects the brain to the gut. So you're thinking, people who are like, well, how is the gut connected to the brain? Like, where do the two connect? They connect in the nervous system, which is the vagus nerve. And then if the vagus nerve is dysregulated, it can cause the gut to be dysregulated. And then the gut, from my understanding, by the way, this is your area, not mine, that it also creates the dysregulation of your mood, anxiety, hyperactivity, all these other symptoms that we're talking about. And I was like, well, that's kind of crazy. And then there was this Netflix show that everyone was talking about at some point, and they're talking about fecal transplants and how when sometimes people receive a fecal transplant, which it makes sense to me, understanding how the body can either take or not take a transplant of any sort, organ or whatnot, that if the person who received the fecal transplant got it from somebody who had either depression, I think the best case was somebody had got it from acne. So the person who gave the fecal transplant had acne, and then the person who received the fecal transplant received acne. Like they had no cases of acne, and then now they're breaking out, or now their mood has changed. With all of this new data surrounding the gut and how much it does dictate the body's mood or how you behave, it makes me really, that's why I was really wanting to have you on, because what do you have to lose? They've pulled your license. So you can talk about this openly. You're not like having to worry about, I'm going to have to operate within this world. So do you feel that, like, now looking back, that you made the right choice of saying that? And is there more that we now have uncovered? And like this whole, Wikipedia page that Snopes is bullshit, but people go to Wikipedia because, they want to kind of read things. And then like the first couple lines is nothing nice about you. And just hanging out with you this morning, you seem to be very genuine and very honest. So where is this, like, by the way, we also need to talk about what we're doing with your fucking haircut. I want to know, like, where does this term, like why was the license pulled? And why does it, there's this thing of a conflict of interest, and then there's this fraud thing that comes up. And the thing that I've learned from watching PR reports about celebrities and knowing the true stories of what's actually gone on, because I'm friends with some of these people, is that, one, I jokingly say that anytime TMZ is making somebody look crazy, they're probably correct, because of my personal interactions with some people and knowing what's going on. I'm like, they're making them look crazy. They're doing a character assassination, trying to destroy the character, because what they're saying is so undeniably true that they have to make them look bizarre and crazy so no one will even give them attention. That's like rule number one for me for PR. That's the first thing I think of. And then the other thing I think of is they use these big words that scare people, so they don't want to do any further digging. And who has the time to dig? And who would understand the medical reports if you didn't go to school? That all these big words, like even just a second ago, I had to ask you about that word I can't pronounce because my mouth doesn't want to work that way. Encephalopathy. I can't even say it.
Encephalopathy.
Thank you. Like even that word, like how many people know what that is? I know about it because I've heard it mentioned, and I heard it mentioned in your movie. So that's how I know what that actual definition is. But I don't think most people do know that. So there's a lot to uncover, and I have to cut your hair, and I will take as long or as short as you are willing to give me with time. Real quick, I know you like your hair short because
it's a two.
It's a two.
It's a two.
We're doing it by hand. Two, you'd be out of here in 2 seconds, man. You wouldn't be able to finish the beginning of like Tell of Two Cities if it was a two. I want to get to the bottom of this because I feel like knowing how people edit shit, they don't, there's only a few people who do long form, and I really want to absolutely like understand exactly what went on, because I feel like there's probably a lot of missing fucking pieces of your whole story, especially if you read your Wikipedia and you read anything about you, it's just all the bad shit. And I just know from, again, some of my friends and, acquaintances that are in the media, and I know what gets put out about them. And then I know the whole actual story because I'm friends with these people. They cherry pick what makes their story better. Again, they're not very clear about what's gone on. So I want to know that. Is that okay? Can we
That's absolutely fine. Yeah.
And then you do films. And so I also want to know, like, where's the jump from like, hi, I'm a gastroenterologist to now I'm making feature films. I want to know where that idea and pivot has come to. I think it's just crazy. So let's do this. All right. I got the cape on you. A 2 on the sides, we're not going to do a 2 on the sides. Because a 2 on the sides, what that does is as it grows out, it cuts the hair really roughly, and then it doesn't grow out gracefully. And so like, let's say you wanted to grow your hair out, or like you couldn't get in. By doing it with the scissors, it actually has a better grow out. So
I think gracefully is the key.
Gracefully,
no one's ever.
Well, I'm just looking at this harshness between here and here.
I got this Carlick as well. That's just
where this one.
That one, yeah, it drives me
that's
crazy.
Nothing. I have a couple guy clients. Their cowlicks are just, oh man, they're just brutal. All right, so let's start with number 1. What was the year that you put the thing in the BMJ?
It was in the Lancet.
Lancet, is that a subsidiary of the BMJ?
No.
It's completely separate.
Entity, yeah. The Lancet was one of the world's leading journals out of England.
And that happened in 95 or 98?
It was 98. We started the work on autism in 95.
Okay. And you're just trying to treat these parents, kids, because you're just trying to help them heal their gut.
We're trying to understand, is there a gut disease? If so, can we help it? Mm-hmm. And if we can help it, does it have an effect upon their autism? And if all those things pan out, then we have to take their claim that the MMR was involved very, very seriously. And bear in mind, there's nothing that's illogical about this. All three of those viruses, measles, mumps, and rubella, have been linked to brain inflammation. Okay, so there's nothing, this isn't rocket science. This is saying, okay, let's take the historical narrative, let's take the evidence that's been accumulated on this and see if it's true, if it holds up in this situation. That's all you're doing. But because it's a vaccine, if we were talking about the natural infection, people would be, oh yeah, that's fascinating. But because we're talking about a vaccine, it can't possibly be true. And that was something I was to discover. In my naivete, I believed that the government would find this interesting. Is there something we could do to interrupt the epidemic of this problem?
Especially considering that England already had an issue with birth defects in, it was the late 50s, 60s.
Yeah, with thalidomide.
Yeah. The UK government already has a history of saying something is safe.
Oh, yeah. Governments do this, yeah. Pharmaceutical industries do this.
Oh, yeah, it's safe until we're sued enough. And then we will now come clean and pay enough money to shut up.
Absolutely.
But that was the thing to me that's why would they not be all right, we already got one wrong. Maybe we should pause and see if this actually is what's going on. And you were met with what? Not open arms?
Not at all. You would think that there's no humility in these people, and particularly when profits in the pharmaceutical industry are at stake. Litigation as well. The people don't want to go anywhere near that. So it was a real challenge. Thalidomide was fascinating. It was one of the rare successes of the FDA, where America said, no, we don't want this drug. And that's why there was very little what's called phocomelia, the thalidomide syndrome here. But Europe, England certainly, and Canada and Australia introduced thalidomide, and it caused the most bizarre birth defects. And you'd think that was going to be easy to link to exposure. Well, it was, but that got suppressed for a very long time, and compensation didn't come until much, much later, 50 years, when many of these individuals who'd been damaged were dead. Mm-hmm. It was a disgraceful episode, but it's a salutary lesson on how these people behave. And it was the same with the vaccine. I'll give you an example.
Please.
With the polio vaccine. There was a government document put out by the head of the FDA at the time, and this was back some decades ago, in the context of polio vaccine, but it was true to the mentality, the approach to all vaccines, and that was, whatever the evidence, it doesn't matter what its merits, if it says that the vaccine isn't safe, it cannot be allowed to exist. Their words.
What year was this?
It cannot, oh gosh, I'll get you the date for that, but it was at least 30 years ago, 40 years ago.
From today's date?
Yeah, from today's date. But it was in the context of polio, perhaps even longer. But it was the science, whatever its merits, if it criticizes, if it brings attention to the vaccine safety, it cannot be allowed to exist. How can you even write that, even if you believe it? I mean, that's it. So for people like me investigating vaccine safety, I wish I'd known. It's a good thing I didn't know that at the time. I might have changed course in my career and done something different. But that was what we were up against. That's what we are up against. And just a word on Wikipedia. Wikipedia is garbage.
Well, I know.
And it's not, what happens is that you are initially allowed, or they allowed us to edit, with factual evidence to edit their entry on Wikipedia about me. And then they blocked it. There was no more editing. Once their story had been returned to the pages of Wikipedia, there were to be no changes. Now I wonder who influenced that decision, but there it was.
Clients, they just pull up either Google or Wikipedia. So it's not like I'm choosing these. I'm just observing what people use for search engines.
Sure.
And so I'm just like, hey, here's what I see people use. So I'm going to use those as my reference points.
No, it's a very valuable reference point because it gives you an insight into what the other side are capable of putting out there.
Yeah. And then don't ask ChatGPT because it's just more enforcement
of
that same narrative. I really just want to know what it is because I grew up watching X-Files. So I've always say, not in the aspect of aliens, but the truth is out there. That's the one thing I got from the show. Skeptical of things, do your own research. The truth is out there. And sometimes the truth isn't what you want to hear. And I think I've wondered this based off of everything that people have told me about childhood vaccines and vaccine injury, which is a real thing. That is a real thing, To the extent of what people say it is, I'm not going to get into that debate, but we can all agree that there are adverse effects with vaccines. That's an undisputable thing. I wonder how many parents don't want to believe that because if it is true that these things did cause the harm and they were so pro these things, then the guilt of inadvertently...
It's a very difficult thing to come to terms with. Incredibly difficult. It's rather like the reaction you were talking about earlier of a colleague to the COVID shot. Yeah. How can you question this? Don't question it, because if you're right, it means that I jump blindly into this. And I'm a highly intelligent executive in a company. Why would I do that for myself and my family? Well, because you trusted inappropriately, you were lied to. Back in the day, and here's an interesting sort of historical context to this. Back in the day, now people are familiar with the cancel culture, for medicine in particular. After COVID, some of the most eminent physicians in this country, Peter McCullough among them, the most published cardiologist in the history of the world, was totally expendable when he came out and criticized the COVID vaccine and the approaches to treatment of COVID. And he was absolutely right, of course, but that didn't matter. He was expendable and they threw him out.
I mean, just recently, I read that the FDA or the CDC, one of the American medical agencies, is saying that ivermectin is actually really great at treating COVID, which was considered crazy talk, and that they're starting to find that ivermectin may even show promising signs of battling particular cancers now
absolutely.
Too. Yeah. And here is a drug, the ivermectin drug, which I think is amazing that everyone, for some reason, memory hold that it won a Nobel Prize for amazing work. It's incredibly cheap. And people had been on this for like decades at that time. Yeah.
Well, here's the deal, and I'm sure you know this, is that in order for the vaccine manufacturers, the COVID shot manufacturers, to be exempt from liability, then there could be no other alternative, no effective treatment for COVID. So if an effective treatment like ivermectin came along, if it reared its ugly head, it had to be stamped on, because it meant that they could no longer fall under what's called the PrEP Act and get liability protection.
Okay.
They were going to get sued for all the damage done. And so it was done explicitly, it was to avoid litigation to the pharmaceutical companies. And how many people suffered as a consequence? Absolutely staggering. But back in the day, so that's the situation now. People are familiar with cancel culture post-COVID, but when I got involved, there was me. And I don't say this as a sort of bad luck Andy kind of story. It's just a fact of life. And on the other side, there were the pharmaceutical companies making the vaccines, the governments of the World Health Organization, the American Academy of Pediatrics. Anyway, it was me against these people. And there's no way you're going to win that. You cannot take on that sheer power, including, of course, the Rupert Murdoch's media.
Yeah.
So they can print what they like. And unless you've got a great deal of money, it's going to be impossible to sue them. So we did, and we did sue them. We did sue the journalist and the British Medical Journal for the allegations of fraud, and we were absolutely right. So and the courts in Texas, sadly, the courts in in Austin, the state court would not allow us to go forward with the case, even though the legal precedent was entirely on our side.
So they squashed it.
They squashed it, and we had proven that it was actually the British Medical Journal that had committed fraud and not me. And that's why they had to squash it, because someone very high up said this case cannot go forward.
Let me back up. So you decided to start litigating against the BMJ for the fraud or the slanderous things that they were doing.
So that defamation, yeah.
The defamation, and you had every legal right, not only just the legal right, but you were in the precedent. Like, I had a client who was a defense attorney, so I learned a little bit about law. Like, if you ever want to talk about something that you're not too sure of, you have to use the word allegedly. I thought that was really great. He goes, best legal advice, say allegedly. And anytime you're talking about allegedly, because you're just saying, I don't know, but I've heard this. I thought that was great advice. Probably saved me thousands of dollars. Allegedly. So what happens is when a lot of court cases are not decided on the actual letter of the law, they usually use previous court cases to help determine the outcome. So even though this thing may be considered legally wrong, but in that case, the outcome was this other outcome. And so people start using the outcome of cases versus actually the legal law standing. And so you would have been the first to have the precedent to change something or the outcome, which probably more than likely would have enforced the law even more, right? And so it was not to their benefit, clearly not yours, to squash this. It seems like that shouldn't happen at all. Because like if you're legally in the right and you have the precedent to do this, it seems like how could this happen? Because like I'm under the impression that like our legal system is supposed to be just and it's supposed to provide everybody with the equal amount of opportunity to make their case and their claim. And then in not the opinion, but in court, you're able to prove with, discovery and be able to look at all the records. Both teams exchange all the information. And then in a court of your own peers, then they decide if this is correct or not. Like that's what we're taught in school.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is that that's not what's happening.
Well, I'll tell you the story. It's a fascinating story I've never told before. And that is that we were deposing the deputy editor of the British Medical Journal. Okay. So our lawyers were all there. We were in London deposing this woman. And the question was, the British Medical Journal had alleged that they used the 6 million word transcript of the regulators' proceedings, the medical regulators' proceedings in England, to come to the conclusion that there was fraud, that I had committed fraud. They made that claim where they had used the 6 million word transcript to make sure that everything the journalist had written was true. When we got into deposition, we put it to her that this was not true. And she said, no, it wasn't true. We actually just took what Brian Deere, the journalist, had said and verbatim. As long as his reference was correct, we didn't go to the defense. We didn't go to your defense or your colleague's defense to check whether it was right or there was a response to this allegation that was valid.
Yeah, let me get this hair off your face real quick.
At this stage, their lawyers, the British Medical Journal's lawyers who had flown in from Houston for this hearing, he got up and he walked out of the room because they had lied to him. You never lie to your own counsel. They had lied to him. He was so disgusted. He got up and he walked out. It was a wonderful moment. In dramatic terms, if I was writing a movie, this was the moment they knew they had lost. And immediately they were instructed to come up with an alternative argument, an amended affidavit, and present a new case because they could not rely on the lies that they had told before. We were going to win. We were going to win in court. They had lied and they had not done what they had done. They had committed fraud. And it was an extraordinary situation. And when we were denied, we could not even take it to court on its merits in Texas because the appeal court judges ruled that that we were wrong. They didn't give an argument for why we were wrong. They just ruled that we were wrong. When in fact, their argument was that we didn't have the right to take it to court. There was no precedent. There was ample precedent that said if you have invoked Texas law in some way, in any way, then that's the precedent gives me, the plaintiff, the right to pursue the case in Texas. It's a little complicated, but anyway, they were wrong. So my only interpretation is that someone very high up must have got to them. But that's the past, It was a very dark time, and I said to myself, what do I do now? In fact, it was a really interesting time because I was down in Bandera, out in the country, middle of the night, in the middle of a field, looking up the stars. Billions and billions of stars. And I said to myself, you know what? This isn't about you. This issue is not about you. It's about something far more important. It's about these children who've been deprived of the ability to speak, to communicate, to interact, to enjoy their lives. They're in pain. It's about something far more important. So get over yourself and get back in the fight. And it was at that stage I decided to get away from all that nonsense, not to fight fights I couldn't fight, but to become a filmmaker. And why a filmmaker? Because over the years, people would come to me because of the position I'd taken. They'd come to me from the pharmaceutical companies, the vaccine manufacturers, and from government agencies like the CDC or the Department of Health. Yeah. And they'd said, we've committed a terrible fraud, we've done a terrible thing, and here's the evidence. So I became a sort of repository for whistleblowers.
You were like the vaccine priest in confession. They're like whispering, well,
it's very interesting you should. Whistleblowers come in all sorts.
Oh yeah.
They come in looking to be forgiven. They treat you like a priest in a confessional.
They've absolved their sins.
Absolved their sins. They talk to me and they can walk away.
Yeah, it's your turn.
I say, and I learned very early on, no, that's not the way this is going to work. If you're in, you're all the way in. Don't come and tell me just to make yourself feel better about what you've done and then walk away from the damage that you've actually done. You're in it for the long term, for the court case, for whatever it leads to. And others are far more idealistic and determined, and that really became my life. I thought, these stories would make great movies.
The story alone that you just talked about with the litigation, it feels like this is like one of those great Lincoln lawyer movies. It's just all about law and court, and at the 11th hour, they have to kind of backpedal and come up with some bullshit excuse to jump out of the shit that they just created. Yeah,
that was fascinating. I'll never forget the look on their lawyer's face as he closed his computer, stood up, pushed his chair back, and just walked out of the room and slammed the door. Because you never lie, but you should certainly never lie to your own lawyer.
You're allowed to tell your lawyer post-action what happened. You can't tell him premeditated. And then I can say, by the way, I've done this, but now it's your job to still defend me, even if you know the truth. I thought that was always a strange thing.
Yeah.
That you're allowed to I feel like if somebody admitted guilt, you would feel like you'd have the responsibility to report them immediately. It seems odd.
I don't think I'd make a very good lawyer, I have to say.
I don't think I would have been a really good lawyer either. So what year was this that you had the idea okay, I want to go into film?
Well, it was around 2010, 2011. And the first film was a very interesting story. We were making a reality TV show, 3-part, taking the family with the autistic child before treatment, investigation and treatment, medical investigation and treatment, and then the third show was recovery, showing how proper medical intervention could make a huge difference, not only to the life of the child with autism, but by proxy his parents and the rest of the family. And during the filming of this show, we got involved with a child in Chicago, and he was 14, he was very big and strong, and he was very violent, and he was in 4-point locked restraints when we came to see him, handcuffed to the bed in a pediatric intensive care unit. And the doctors had given him something upwards of 28 psychotropic medications. And each one was given to offset the side effects of the last one, and this is what was making him violent.
Yeah.
So he was there with his mother and his godmother. She was estranged from her husband. This was Chicago. We took them. We drove through the night to New York, got him scoped by an expert gastroenterologist, got him diagnosed with the inflammation, and he was put on the right diet, the right treatment. But the problem is, when his mother took him back to Chicago, they had nowhere to live because she and her husband had parted. He'd taken the house, and so they were going from hotel to motel. And every time he heard a siren, they were coming to take him away and chain him up again. And he would get violent and destroy the room, and they were thrown out and had to move on.
So the siren was a trigger.
The siren was the trigger.
Okay. I just want to make sure that...
And there are plenty of sirens in Chicago. So
yeah,
the next time we saw him, we went up, and he was back in intensive care unit, pediatric intensive care unit in Lutheran Hospital. And his godmother had a huge black eye. The light in the family's eyes had gone out. They had reached the end of their tether. They hadn't slept. Their life was an utter misery. He was chained up again, back on 2 intravenous and 1 intramuscular sedation. And we left, and we went to try and find somewhere safe to get him off the drugs and to decompress. And during the week that we had gone, his mother stabbed him to death and tried to kill him herself, as did the godmother. None of what I'm telling you is in any way to endorse harm to children or suicide. It's about the power of film. Now, what happened is we thought, you know what, this isn't a before and after, this is a movie in itself. So we made a documentary, and it was called Who Killed Alex Spourdalakis, because we had a lot of film of this child. You see, the local media tried to paint this as mother who hates her child. She didn't. She loved him. It was obvious. We were with them for a long, long period, and she was desperate to help her child, and she just reached her limits. She couldn't take any more. And
everybody does have a breaking point.
Absolutely, and she reached her breaking point. So we made the movie, and she was put in maximum security, and she was in prison for 4 years, and she had still not gone to trial.
Wait, so she's been in prison?
She's been in prison for 4 years in Chicago, still not gone to trial.
How's that happen?
I don't know. It was a mystery. And I got a call from her lawyer, and the film is now out. It had been out for 3 or so years, and the lawyer said, I just got a call from the state's prosecutor. And the state's prosecutor, he was responsible for putting her away, he said, I understand a film has been made about this. I'd like to see it. So her lawyer said, I send her my last copy. He called me back a short while later and said, we can no longer prosecute this case in the same way. She will be released from prison next week.
Oh my gosh.
And that was the first time in American legal history that a film had this impact. And it taught me, again, it's not about harm to children, it's not about suicide, it was about the power of film to change people's minds. And it did that. It changed her mind, and it changed their minds, and changed the outcome for her and the godmother.
So my friend Aaron Lockhart, her brother Jeremy is about 40, and he's a great kid. And I say kid because he's developed at a much lower rate. He's autistic. Then he's going to be 40 this year. He's 4 years younger than me. My friend is a few years younger than me, but he's come over. We've gone to the pool, and it's so great to see how he interacts with my children, who are now 7 and 9. At the time, they were a few years younger. But there is this childlike behavior in this grown man's body. And my friend Aaron was talking about, since they've really focused on his weight management, because he loves soda and he loves sugar, and they've changed his diet, his outbursts have become less volatile. And you hear so much about diet really does affect the outcome of these children. And some people say it's the wheat, it's the gluten. I don't know if it's the wheat or the gluten. I've sometimes wondered if it's like the glyphosate or if it's something else or is it like it happened? Like, for instance, some people can handle peanuts, other people can't handle peanuts. Are these people who, I mean, has anybody done like a genetic coding, like a genetic thing to see if there's any commonality of overlapping genes?
Oh, I'm sure they have. I'm not a geneticist.
I know you're not, but I didn't know if you had known, like, there's this guy who's done this study, you should check it out. Because like the one thing I've always wondered, because I have MTHFR.
Right.
And my dad has MTHFR. My mother does. That just means we can't methylate. We can't detox these things out of our body. Our body loves to hold on to it. And because of that, we have a very low toxicity household. And going down that rabbit hole of autism, talking about this with other people, is one of them said, hey, have you heard of this gene? People who have this may be more susceptible to holding on to certain things that may also cause autism. But does the MTHFR, and I'm just spitballing here because I don't really know, does that sort of stuff interfere with the gut? Like, is there a connection to people who have this and also their gut health?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, your gut is central to your ability to detoxify, and the bacteria from your gut are central to that, and your enzyme systems that are responsible for detoxification in that sort of liver-gut axis are very crucial. Mm-hmm. I think one of the few of all the billions of dollars that have been spent on genetics research on the hope that they would find a genetic cause for autism, the only thing that's really emerged as a consistent finding, particularly in the subset of children we're talking about, those who've regressed, those who've had GI problem, is this MTHFR, this deficiency in methylation. And
which, according to Gary Brecka, like 40% of the population have a strain of this MTHFR that they're just born with. And that he said that on wrong, like 40, I think it's like 40 or 45%, it's close to half, which don't respond well to like folic acid when it needs to be folate and all these other things. The thing that you're talking about with MTHFR, like my hypothesis has been like, what if you have all these people who don't know that they have MTHFR and they're loading up on all this folic acid, and folic acid is the exact nemesis to somebody who has MTHFR.
Making it worse.
You're making it worse in utero. So even if, let's say you're like, hey, we did all these things and we didn't vaccinate because we're concerned, but why is my children exhibiting symptoms of autism? Could it, like, my thing is like, well, I don't think it's like a cut and dry thing. I think it's like many factors in play. And if you're disrupting the gut system, that would disrupt your mood. Am I?
No.
How far off am I?
No, you're completely right. It is immensely complex.
Because I'm just a hairdresser at the end of the day. I'm trying to make sense of people's conversations and data,
Yeah, we're only just beginning to understand it. And sadly, because of the vaccine implications, the funding for the research has been very, very slow in coming. And we should be a lot further ahead. If I had stayed at the Royal Free Hospital, we'd be many years ahead, but it was crushed. The research was crushed because it raised questions about vaccine safety. And so that's a great shame. A lot of children have been harmed as a consequence of that approach from the authorities and the people, their friends in industry and elsewhere. But two things.
Yes.
Nature doesn't conserve genes for no reason.
Okay.
And they shouldn't be regarded as defective genes.
Okay.
Because nature tends to conserve genes because they confer an advantage, a biological advantage. Simply because we don't know what that advantage is, doesn't mean that there isn't some merit to it.
I mean, that's the thing my wife and I, my boys are like, Mom is darker than you. I'm like, well, she's Puerto Rican, and I'm not Puerto Rican. And we're trying to explain to our kids, because of where our ancestors were, there was either a lot of sun or minimal sun. And our bodies evolved to absorb vitamin D for those short periods of time or prolonged periods of time.
Correct.
And so, like, I imagine it isn't a defect. It's just a misunderstood thing. Like,
well, it becomes a problem when you change the environment.
Okay.
When you change the environmental exposures, for example, mercury in vaccines, for example, aluminum in vaccines, for example, live viral vaccines given in combination early on, then you run into problems. So we make it into a problem. It was not necessarily a problem to begin with, simply because nature doesn't, over the millions of years and, the hand of God, whatever it might be, nature doesn't tend to make mistakes at the kind of level that would be necessary to see the prevalence of autism that we see at the moment, the sheer numbers of children affected. So it's the environment, it's changing the environment that turns a gene that may be an advantage into a disadvantage.
The diagnosis is through the roof. Everybody always talks about that's the thing, like, oh, well, we're just diagnosing thing. I'm like, I don't remember ever hearing about adult people in nonverbal communications. I just don't remember seeing that. And if there was anybody who was nonverbal, it was some sort of like physical thing. You could see that their muscles weren't developing correctly, and there was a lot of, cognitive issues that were going along with that. So that's the one thing. And then the other one that you said was the advantage, which was interesting. There's a movie, one of the Predator movies, where the hero is a kid who's on the spectrum, and he basically outsmarts the Predator. And at the end of the movie, I'm giving it away, is the Predator respects him because he more or less is like, well, this is the next evolution of humans.
Right.
And it was a very interesting take because I'm like, is this the next evolutionary jump with people? Is that this is what's going to be the norm?
Well, it's a fascinating observation that actually it finds a place in the latest film that we're trying to make at the moment. We can talk about that, but absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, it's like, is this the next evolutionary jump? And then before we started getting recording, it's like, so many things now get put into this ASD, autism spectrum disorder. I have clients and friends who believe that their child or relative was harmed by vaccines. And they said, putting somebody who has some sort of neurodivergence is like stolen valor. They said it's not the same thing to them. And then having my clients, a psychiatrist, that, what we normally would have called Asperger's is now, we can't say Asperger's because of the tie to Nazi Germany. And so like, there's all these weird politics that also get involved with like expanding the scope of what really autistic or autism is. And I always kind of go back to like, I think about my friend Erin and her brother Jeremy. I'm like, that to me has always just been, that's what autism is. And people are like, oh, I'm autistic. I'm like, I don't think you understand what that is, because like, this is a very different thing. There's very different severities. It's like me saying, oh, I'm so depressed, versus somebody who is severely depressed and has tried to take their own life several times. Like, those are two different levels of depression.
Right. The biochemistry that is responsible for that may be the same, but to a different degree.
Yeah.
Or it may have a different effect, if you like, downstream. The key question for me is that the best diagnosticians in medicine were not of this century or the last century. They were of the century before. They were people like Jean-Martin Charcot in Paris, and people who worked for him like Gilles de la Tourette of Tourette syndrome, Babinski of the Babinski response in children. These people were outstanding clinicians. They didn't have the means to treat diseases effectively. But if there had been a syndrome like autism, they would have described it from top to toe, and it didn't exist. It didn't exist. I mean, they were outstanding, and if it had existed, it would be in the textbooks. So it is new. What we're seeing is new. It's an epidemic of something new, and you can push and pull it any way you want. But there is, now we're talking about 1 in 30 children, 1 in 12 boys in California.
Why is California so high?
Well, it's because they have a system in place to ascertain cases. New Jersey is the same.
Okay.
They've been ascertaining cases using the same criteria, same clinicians, same methodology for a prolonged period of time. And therefore they ascertain cases extremely well.
Okay.
And so it's not that the prevalence is different in different states across America. It may be, but there may be a very simple explanation, and that is the ascertainment of cases is better in New Jersey and California than it is elsewhere, because their system has been operating for longer and has many more experts within it.
When I hear that, especially like, with everything that's gone on with so much fraud between different states, you kind of wonder, like, is there some financial incentive to also like increase those numbers for funding.
Well, in Minnesota, it seems to be that was the case.
The luring center.
Yeah, the luring center.
I thought that was a joke. I got on X and I was like, I don't know who this guy is. There's no effing way there's a business for learning, and I forgot the N.
Yeah.
I just couldn't believe that. It feels like you just said, you know what, I'm over this shit. That's what it sounds like. Like you're over the battle and figuring out like, how can I still do my battle, but reach more people? Because everything you're doing is all protected with court records, court this, and no one wants to cover it because it's not sensationalist. It's like some crazy story that gets on TMZ, right? So like the only way to really reach like normal people is like through film and television, is through screens. You know, it's happened through everything, you know? So you had this idea around 2010, and then you've made a few movies since then. I did watch, I think it's your most recent one.
Protocol 7?
Protocol 7, yeah. Movies can reach like such a large audience, and TV and film and all that. So like, this is your new mission. It feels like with Protocol 7, your most recent movie, is that like, it's getting a story across that you feel people need to hear and that people need to be aware of. But you're doing it in a very entertaining and engaging way. And your Protocol 7, which I watched because I wanted to see it, because I wanted to like know more. And by the way, I don't like doing any research about anybody, but you're already in my like sphere of knowledge because of my clientele. I'm like, I have to watch this. It was interesting because it was very like Aaron Brockovich. Like it's a story which the outcome is so surprising. The real world outcome of this lawsuit. Are you going to be doing any more of these things? More of these sort of movies? Or are you going to be branching out to like different stuff?
No, I made 4 documentaries, and then I decided I wanted to get into narrative features. They just allowed more flexibility. I love working with actors. And so I've made 2 feature films now and got a 3rd that's planned. But that was a fun movie, very high risk movie, because you're basically calling employees of a pharmaceutical company fraud. You're just coming out and saying it.
And that's opening yourself for a lot of lawsuits.
A lot of lawsuits, unless you're right. If you're right, they're going to back off because they don't want to go anywhere near it, and that's exactly what they did.
So they didn't even try to attempt it because that just puts the light right back on them.
Absolutely. And it turned out when the case went to court in real life. The case went to court and the judge threw it out and Merck won. Why? Not because they didn't commit fraud.
Okay.
Not because they didn't deceive the public and the doctors and the CDC and everybody else, but because the government went on purchasing the vaccine for its Vaccines for Children program. Mm-hmm. And therefore the judge said, even if they committed fraud effectively, it didn't matter.
Why?
It didn't matter because the government went on buying the vaccine anyway. I've never heard so much garbage in all my life. And so what you have here is the government, the industry, the law, basically conspiring against parents to harm their children. Absolutely staggering. And so if it had not been for the film, no one would ever know a thing about this case. It would have been buried once and for all. And that was what Merck were hoping for. And when we got all of the court documents, the actual expert reports, it turned out that the fraud was even worse than we had imagined and portrayed in the film. So it's a bad world.
It's just, I just keep thinking if there was committed fraud in finance, it wouldn't be the same outcome. I feel like different industries are treated differently in court and also in the court of public opinion. Like,
true.
Like, oh, of course, people are greedy, so they're going to do this. But like, I also find it, and maybe since you've dealt with these people more than me, I always find it really interesting when I meet somebody who's like super pro-vaccine, but like also in the same paragraph when you're talking to them, they'll say, you just can't trust these pharmaceutical companies because, you know, they're out to get your money. They're out to get you hooked. And when I hear that, I'm like, they're the same people. You can trust them completely in one section, but completely not trust them in another. And like at the same, it's not like it's different people in control. At the same, it's the whole organization. Like there's a culture in those organizations. Like how does somebody, like where does that disconnect? Because to me, it seems very disconnected.
I don't know. It's a bizarre thing. And one thing that strikes me is that there's a lot of influence brought to bear. And I think it's in part the argument, and this has been used many times, if you raise questions over the safety of this vaccine, parents will stop getting it for their children, and these diseases will come back and children will die, and it'll be your fault. It'll be on you for raising this issue in the first place, even if there was fraud, even if they behaved badly.
Yeah.
And so faced with the allegation, faced with the prospect, the alleged prospect, that children will die as a consequence of their actions, whatever the merits of those actions, even though they may be right in law, then it cannot be allowed to go forward. And that really is that's my interpretation of this.
We've used the word fraud a lot in this conversation. What is the legal definition that they use to describe fraud? Is it misrepresenting something, or is it and is there no gray area for misrepresenting?
Yes, I think the knowing significant misrepresentation of factual data.
Because that's what gets put in your Wikipedia. Yeah. And so where was that claim on your stuff? They
claim that I made up the bowel disease. I didn't even diagnose the bowel disease. I didn't do the colonoscopies that took the pictures and said this is inflamed and ulcerated. I didn't look down the microscope and say there is inflammation in these biopsies. That was not me. That were the experts at the Royal Free Hospital. And yet I was accused of falsifying the data on the bowel disease.
Oh, because you didn't initially treat them. So basically somebody had done some stuff. They said, I don't understand it. You take a look at it.
No. I coordinated, put a team together of experts.
Okay.
I coordinated the team. I ran the team. And included in the team were John Walker-Smith and his fellow pediatric gastroenterologists. John Walker-Smith was the leading pediatric gastroenterologist in the world at the time.
Yeah.
He wrote the textbook that taught all the others.
Yeah.
And then the pathologist, an expert in bowel disease. So I didn't make these diagnoses.
He did.
They did, yeah, and yet it's alleged that I've made up the bowel disease. It's staggering, and it should never, ever have been.
So that's where the fraud comes from?
Yeah.
Okay, it's just crazy, because there's this phrase, you've probably heard it, the first one through the door gets shot. You know what I'm talking about? Have you heard that?
Yes.
You do it, everyone just arrows to you, you're done, they destroy character, assassinate you, just say all these things, so no one will want to touch you. But then the next person after that, the door's been open and the body's laying on the floor. So it's easier to get through to that bridge, right? And so I always think and I did think about this because of all of my clientele during the 2020 thing, is seeing McCullough getting canceled, and then seeing Robert Malone and all these other credible doctors that had these amazing celebrated careers until they pushed against Goliath.
Yeah.
And so I always think of wow, it's if you want to get popular now, do a sex tape. But it destroyed Pam Anderson's career. She was the first one through the door, Now
we can do it.
And now that's the quickest way to get popularity. And now so many other doctors are not getting the pushback. And some of them are actually in the current administration now. I mean, Jay Bhattacharya was one of those individuals, right? You have Malhotra, who's an advisor, who came out quite early before a lot of stuff and pushed back at it. You have McCullough and all these individuals. And do you feel that medical narrative is shifting because they have to? Or is it just there's because of the public pressure and the skepticism that seems to be more open?
They have to, because there are so many credible physicians, politicians, others saying this is a problem. You've lied to us, you've lied to us, you've lied to us on every count. And you have lost credibility. We no longer trust experts, and you've destroyed confidence in public health, and it will take a generation to rebuild any of that confidence. So it's entirely their own fault. And the market always wins. Now that Pfizer have had to withdraw their latest trial on a new vaccine, because they can't get people to enter the trial because they've lied and cheated and stolen and done all those things, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And the market will win. When I got involved in this, there were a handful of people worldwide who were prepared to discuss this thorny issue. Now it's more than half the adult population of the world are saying, actually, you know what? I'm not going to have the next shot. I'm not going to have the booster dose of that vaccine. I don't believe them anymore. And this is the market. This is the market. The market is going to win this. Irrespective now of what I do or what anyone else does, doesn't mean we stop pushing, stop getting the truth out there.
Yeah.
But, we're beyond the tipping point. So, and they've only got themselves to blame for this. It's the Faucis, the Peter Daszaks of this world who are responsible for this.
Yeah.
This parlous situation.
It's so funny because during the 2020 thing, everybody was praising Fauci for like his leadership, right? I was always skeptical of that guy because of a movie, Dallas Buyers Club.
Yes, indeed.
Who's the villain?
Yeah.
The villain is the government, and who was in charge of the government agency that pulled all of those possible, natural, cheap solutions for people who had HIV. Who was at the helm of that during that time? It was Fauci.
Yeah.
And so I would ask people, I go, if you love Dallas Buyers Club and you thought what would happen to those individuals, that the government took their right away to treat their bodies how they felt was going to be the best, then you should be really reconsidering your alliances with this individual. Because if you thought that was horrible, then I just couldn't understand it. Because like my whole thing, I'm like, clearly, and they don't ever tell you Fauci's the guy in the movie. But if you just look at he's been in there since like what? Late 70s?
Oh, for a very long time.
He was like the highest paid government person for the longest time. And he'd been there like the most senior tenured 10-year individual. And so like he was clearly in power during that time. It's just really crazy that like this hero, and by the way, so many people are changing their tune on this now.
Yeah.
It's been really interesting, like watching people like Chris Cuomo, like really just kind of like shift. Not that I ever cared about much of these talking heads' opinion anyways, but it was just really interesting to see take such strong opinions and then only have to really kind of retract them and actually be using these treatments to get rid of their like long COVID or the complications from having it, or possibly even a side effect of the vaccine that they took. So what else is going on, Andy?
Well, we're winning, and it may not happen in my lifetime, but common sense will prevail, and the children of the world will be healthier for it. My final contribution to this, or it may be one of my final contributions in terms of film, is one that I'm trying to get made now.
Okay.
And it's a story, it's a fascinating story, really. It's about the thing that haunts parents of children with autism every day, every waking moment. For millions of parents in this country with children with autism, particularly those with profound autism, is what happens to my child when I die? What happens?
Yeah.
There's no one to care for them, there's no one who understands them, and there's certainly no one who loves them. And this was rather a reflection of what had happened with that first child in Chicago whose mother had taken his life. And it's a major, major problem. And so I came into this issue through autism, and that's where I have to remain and not get distracted. And it's this particular issue that I want to deal with. And it came about because I was at a conference, and someone had organized the conference. A woman took me out for dinner that night, and over dinner she asked me if I would father a child for her.
Wow.
Now you may think, well, what a strange thing to ask. And what an even stranger thing to tell me on this podcast. But she wasn't interested in sex with Andy Wakefield. What she wanted was to have a healthy child, a sibling for her only son who was profoundly affected, so that when she died or became infirm and was unable to continue to care for him, there was someone who understood him and loved him and would take that on. And this is the sort of central dilemma for many parents. What happens? What happens when I'm gone? And it's one that I wanted to make a movie. I was so inspired, I was so moved by her sincerity that I decided to write a movie about it. I was very moved. This is back in 2012.
Okay.
And what you do with these, what I wanted to do was get away from the issue of causation. I didn't want the film to be distracted by that. I wanted to remain focused on this core issue of survival and what happens to these individuals. And so I wrote the screenplay as a Western.
Ooh.
And I put it on the shelf, as you do with these things. You think this will have its time will come, and its time has now come. And for many reasons. But I was in the process of trying to raise the capital, and of course the film industry is in a pretty
It's a weird spot.
disastrous
It's
state
a very
right now.
weird spot. Like,
yeah, it's a great shame. And I was struggling to get the necessary funding for this film, and my assistant, who's a wonderful person, said, you need to write this as a book. And hopefully the book will attract the attention of people who can underwrite the film, and you'll get the film made. And so I thought, damn, she's right. I know she's right. So I'm going to have to sit down and write it. So I did. I sat down and wrote it as a book. And it's coming out soon, very soon.
Oh, cool.
It's coming out on the 26th of June of this month. And I hope it's going to attract a great deal of attention. It also goes into an issue of autism, which I'm fascinated by, and it's something we've alluded to earlier, and that is the unique gifts of communication and intelligence that many of these individuals do have. It's extraordinary, and the psychic abilities to communicate, particularly with their mothers. And it is intriguing because it opens up all kinds of possibilities that I suppose contemporary physics has at least partly an explanation for, in some form of quantum entanglement or connectivity. That these two entities that were once one, the mother and her child, are inseparable. They can communicate with each other in ways that we had never anticipated, never thought of really before. Psychic abilities that allow them to communicate. Absolutely fascinating, and it's opening up a whole new understanding of communication and consciousness in the world. So,
I mean, people talk about this with twins all the time. The twin will say, "I felt my twin, my other half." It's not an uncommon thing for that twins have that.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter how far they're separated.
It's crazy.
The distance between them doesn't matter.
Yeah,
and this is the whole basis of this quantum entanglement.
My friend Erin, her brother, she was saying, because she saw this thing, it was, I forget the doctor, was it, who was talking about this like telepathic gifts. I can't forget the doctor. She watched that, and then she was watching it a little bit more with, on a podcast called The Way Forward with Alec Zach, about this power of being able to like understand. And it doesn't sound crazy, especially if you understand remote viewing. But she was saying that her brother definitely does seem to have this knowing before the know. Again, all of these things are unrelated, but like, are they?
Well, there's so much that we don't understand. And as long as we acknowledge that, have the humility and the intelligence to acknowledge that we, as Einstein said, the universe may not only be more complex than we can understand, but more complex than we're able to understand. I believe it was Einstein. Anyway, so this is my pet project. It's a passion project that I want to get made before I pass, but it's got to be done because attention needs to be brought to this incredibly pressing issue.
Yeah.
What about the children who've been injured on the battlefield of man's quest to conquer infectious disease? They cannot be left as they are at the moment in the way the world is at the moment. Something has got to be done. And if I can bring attention to that, then that's what this film intends to do. And I hope you don't mind me doing this, but I never do this, but if there's anyone out there, any one of your listeners who would be interested in becoming part of this, because the book's now coming out.
Yeah.
It's a lot cheaper to get a book out than it is to make a movie. A lot cheaper. And financial help in some way with the marketing of this book is essential in order to get it the kind of attention it deserves. I'm really hoping someone may say, wow, that would make a great movie. And then that gets picked up and people run with it. So if there is anyone out there, please get in touch with us. And Instagram, however you come to us through.
I'll put all your contact in the show notes for sure.
That would be wonderful.
I'll do everything but your email and phone number.
Great, thank you. I'll put it down.
Imagine putting someone's phone number.
This is the New York Times. Yeah, this is.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to read it. Like I told you earlier, I'm not a big reader, but like you were telling me a little bit.
It's not the Lord of the Rings. It's digestible. You'll be able to do it. Yeah.
So we'll put a little bit of product in here. Is this how's that length, Phil?
That's perfect. Thank you.
All right, cool. Yeah. I'm going to just get your sideburns because you were talking and I didn't want to interrupt what you were saying with this buzzing going on the microphone because that would be awful. I just want to say thank you for taking the time out of your schedule. I imagine you could be doing many other things. I know, getting a haircut is something you do need to get at some point. You just didn't need to do it this long and on camera, so I appreciate it.
People who cut hair will never be out of a job. It's like people who make coffins, they'll never be out of a job.
You said make coffee?
Coffins.
Well,
to bury people in.
Well, the business will definitely not be out, but the people who assemble them could be replaced with machines, like a factory thing. Do you like more of like a matte paste, shiny paste?
Whatever you recommend. You're in charge.
All right, cool. You say that enough times, I'm going to start believing it. And then my wife would be like, who put you in charge? I'm like, I had 19 people today at the salon. They all told me I was in charge.
It's very easy. I'm trapped. You've got me tied up under here. People can't tell that, but I've actually got
what
tied up under this thing. I'm in handcuffs.
Oh, yeah.
You are in charge.
Yeah, there's handcuffs.
And whatever you do with my hair, it doesn't really. It looks good, but it doesn't really matter. You can't improve.
Oh no!
You're not working.
The thing is that the nice thing is that you the way your coloring is it's lighter down here. So if you take it, you don't have to take it short. But it gives you this illusion that you have like a really nice tight crop sort of look, right? And that's just because of the coloring, because it's lighter and then you have more of your peppery here through the top. So if you were to even leave the sides longer, it would have this, it would almost look like you did color your hair.
Okay.
And so by keeping it shorter, I think it looks nicer because it just gives us this soft illusion of like a nice tight, not skin fade, but almost to something like that effect,
Cool.
I hope so.
I'll go with it.
You'll go with it?
All
right. I don't want to make it too crazy and messy for you. Let me get this hair off your face. Well, Andy, so they can find you in the show notes, which what's your website?
What's
your website?
wakefieldmediagroup.com.
Okay.
Yeah, wakefieldmediagroup.com.
All right. And they can go there. They can buy the movies, rent the movies.
Yeah,
stuff.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
And if you want to get in touch with us, info@wakefieldmediagroup.com.
You put the email out there. I didn't do it. Okay.
Wonderful.
And then, thank you so much. And I'm going to send you that link about the thing I just discovered because I don't know about it, but it was about GLP-1s and helping individuals with ADHD and autism. They're apparently they're showing that this might be some reversing of stuff. And I was like, well, this is interesting if it is affecting the gut because GLP-1s are supposed to help with the absorption of insulin, right? Or how it's focused.
I don't know either.
I don't know. But you would know more than me if you read
I don't.
It. Because
you know more than me.
I don't know anything.
It's very important that we have to admit when we just don't know.
Yeah, I know. But I was just curious if they talk about anything that deals with the gut because I was like, this would be interesting. I have to ask you, knowing what you know now, would you still do everything the same way again?
The question I have to ask myself is, on my deathbed, what do I tell my children? That I did the right thing by pursuing this work? The answer is absolutely yes. I may have done things subtly differently in terms of, I was a naive young man, I was headstrong, but I wouldn't have changed anything at all, other than around the fringes. It was the right thing to do. These parents came to me asking for my help, and my job was to give them that help and do whatever I could to help their children. And if that ran contrary to the interests of the government, of the pharmaceutical industry, too bad.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
Adios.